Revenge office stories. My old company sent one email to erase my career, so I sent one command to erase their company. This isn't just a confession. It's the technical breakdown of the ultimate act of employee retaliation. Most stories like this start with a disgruntled employee, a flash of rage, and a single, catastrophic mistake. But this isn't most stories. This wasn't some moment of temporary insanity. It was the logical end to a long and painful equation. For 5 years, I was more than just an employee. I was an architect, a digital ghost in the machine who laid the foundational code for a company that shot up from a 5-person startup to a $100 million enterprise. My nights, my weekends, my mind, they owned it all. In return, I got a title, a respectable salary, and the hollow promise of being part of the family. But families don't get rid of you with a 2-sentence email. Families don't boil down years of your life into a footnote on a termination letter. The day they fired me, they didn't just take my job. They tried to take my identity. They just made one mistake. In their rush to erase me, they forgot to take away the keys to the kingdom I had built. And that's when I decided that if I was going to be erased, I wouldn't be the only one disappearing. To really get why this happened, you need to understand who I was to this company. I wasn't just another coder they hired off the street. I was employee number 7. When I walked in at 25, the office was a cramped room that reeked of stale pizza and ambition. Our server infrastructure wasn't in the cloud. It was a stack of humming desktops under our lead engineer's desk. I was young, hungry, and I bought into the mission. I saw the vision, and I wanted to build it. My title said senior software engineer, but that was just a formality. In reality, I was a systems architect, a database administrator, a DevOps lead, and half the time the unofficial on-call IT guy. I remember one time spending 72 hours straight, fueled by nothing but cold brew and the sheer terror of a product launch, rewriting a critical payment module because our vendor went bankrupt overnight. I didn't just write code, I bled for it. I designed the database schema that would one day hold millions of user records. I architected the server strategy that let us scale without collapsing under our own success. My digital fingerprints were on every single critical piece of that company. Its growth was literally built on the scaffolding of my work. The culture at first felt electric. We were underdogs, a tight-knit crew out to change the world from a second-floor office space. The CEO, a charismatic guy named David, sold us all on the dream. He wasn't just a boss, he was a friend. We weren't employees, we were partners. We celebrated every milestone, every funding round, every big client. It felt like we were building a utopia. But as the money rolled in, things started to curdle. The family started feeling more like a monarchy. The shift was subtle. New execs were brought in, suits with shiny MBAs who had never written a line of code. They saw our creation not as a living thing, but as a bunch of assets on a balance sheet. The language changed from innovation to optimization, from building the best product to maximizing shareholder value. The all-hands meetings became less about a shared vision and more about hitting quarterly numbers. The original builders, people like me, were slowly shoved to the side. We were seen as legacy infrastructure ourselves, functional but expensive and a pain to manage. My new manager, Mark, was the poster child for this new era. He didn't get the tech, but he was an expert in corporate politics. He saw my deep knowledge not as an asset, but as a threat to his authority. He'd demand detailed documentation on systems I'd built from scratch, not to learn, but to find leverage. He'd question my timelines, my decisions, all with the condescending tone of a guy who thought my job could be done by a team of cheap junior devs and a list of his instructions. The breaking point was Project Chimera. It was a massive overhaul of our old authentication and user data systems, a project I'd been pushing for years. The old system was my design, and I knew its flaws better than anyone. It was secure for its time, but it was a ticking time bomb at our current scale. I laid out a full plan, a 6-month roadmap to migrate everything to a new, secure, scalable architecture. Mark shot it down. Too expensive, too slow. Instead, he pushed a solution from a consulting firm, a cheap bolt-on patch that was, in my professional opinion, like putting a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. I argued against it. Hard. In a meeting with the whole exec team, I explained the catastrophic risks. I told him his patch would create more security holes than it fixed. I wasn't just insubordinate. I made him look like an idiot in front of his bosses. I knew right then I'd signed my own death warrant. The retaliation was swift. For the next 2 months, I was a ghost. They took me off all my projects, reassigned my team, ignored my opinions. The psychological hit was brutal. Going from the core architect to a pariah is a uniquely painful kind of corporate gaslighting. They make you feel irrelevant, like nothing you did ever mattered. This quiet firing fills you with anxiety and crushes your self-esteem. You start to question your own worth, your own skills. Then, on a Tuesday morning at 10:17 a.m., the email landed. Subject: your employment status. It was from an HR address I didn't recognize. The body was too cold, robotic sentences. This email is to inform you that your employment with company name is terminated, effective immediately. Your final paycheck will be mailed to you, and a separate communication regarding your benefits will follow. That was it. 5 years of my life erased. No call, no meeting, not even a thanks for your hard work. Just a digital execution. The feeling wasn't just anger, it was pure humiliation. Being fired by email is designed to be impersonal, but it feels deeply personal. It's a sudden amputation of your professional identity, leaving you confused, frustrated, and completely alone. The message was clear: you're not a person. You're a resource we don't need anymore. And at that moment, staring at that email, something inside me broke. And something else, something much colder and more methodical, took its place. The first 24 hours were a blur of shock and white-hot rage. I paced my apartment, replaying 5 years in my head, the insult of that email burning a hole in my mind. The psychological effects of getting fired are often compared to grief. There's shock, denial, anger, and this crushing feeling of worthlessness. Your job is so tied to your identity that when it's ripped away like that, it just leaves a void. I felt like a ghost, already forgotten. They'd erased me. On day 2, the anger started to cool, and curiosity crept in. Out of pure muscle memory, I opened my terminal. My fingers typed the familiar command to connect to the company's VPN. I didn't actually expect it to work. Any competent company has a strict offboarding checklist. Step 1, the absolute basic, is to immediately revoke all access for a departing employee. Email, network, key cards, everything. It's cybersecurity 101. My finger hovered over the enter key. I hit it, connecting to vpn.companyname.com. Authentication successful. IP address assigned. 10.1.12.158. My blood ran cold. It worked. I was in. I just sat there, staring at the screen, heart pounding. It had to be a mistake. Maybe just the VPN, something minor they'd missed. My fingers moved again, this time with more purpose. SSH /ID_server_prod_admin at dbmaster 01.prod.us east 1.internal. This was the real test. The command to connect to the master production database, the heart of the whole company. I was logging in as admin, the root level account I had created years ago, an account with God mode privileges over everything. I held my breath. Last login, Monday, September 15th, 14:32 and 11 seconds, 2025 from 10.1.8.4. Admin at dbmaster, $01. I was in. Root access. The digital keys to the entire kingdom. They hadn't just forgotten to lock the door. They had left it wide open with a welcome mat out front. This wasn't just a slip-up. This was a catastrophic failure of their entire security protocol. In their rush to dump the difficult, expensive senior engineer, they'd skipped the most basic steps. Proper offboarding isn't just about getting a laptop back. It's a critical security process. It involves a detailed checklist, HR and IT working together, and a full inventory of what access an employee has. They failed on every single count. I spent the next hour probing the network. It was worse than I thought. I had access to everything: the primary and secondary databases, the source code repos, the deployment pipeline, the AWS dashboard with permissions to spin up or, more importantly, spin down any server, the financial software, the CRM, holding every single customer's data, and the backups. I checked the backup server. My credentials worked there, too. I couldn't just access the backups. I had the permissions to delete them. It was in that moment, seeing just how negligent they were, that the idea began to form. It started as a whisper, a dark fantasy born out of humiliation. What if? What if I did to them what they did to me? They treated me like a line on a spreadsheet, a resource to be deleted. What if I deleted their resources? They erased my career with an email. What if I erased their company with a few lines of code? Revenge attacks like this are often a desperate grab for control after feeling powerless. That impersonal email was dehumanizing. This oversight, this open door, felt like fate handing me my power back. It was a test. Was I going to walk away or burn it all down? The debate in my mind was fierce. This was illegal. This would have huge consequences, not just for the execs who wronged me, but for innocent people. But the more I thought about it, the more the lines blurred. That company fostered a toxic culture that rewarded politics over real work. The employees who stayed, they were part of the machine that threw me out. The company had become a symbol of everything I hated about the tech industry, a place where people were treated like disposable cogs. My decision solidified when I thought about that email again, effective immediately. The cold, corporate finality. They wanted to erase me, to pretend my 5 years of work never happened. My act wouldn't be random vandalism. It would be a response, a mirror, a perfectly symmetrical act of destruction. I wasn't just going to be another disgruntled ex-employee. I was going to be a force of nature, a ghost in their machine, back to haunt them one last time. This couldn't be a smash and grab. Rage is messy. I needed to be cold, calculating, precise. I was an architect of systems. Now I'd be an architect of their undoing. My goal wasn't just to cause damage. It was to cause irreversible systemic collapse. I wanted them to go to their backups and find corrupted, useless data. I wanted them to reboot their servers and find no operating system. This needed a plan. I spent the next 3 days in a state of pure hyperfocus. Sleep was optional. My apartment became a war room. Whiteboards covered in network diagrams and kill chains. I was using my biggest advantage, my insider knowledge. A malicious insider is uniquely dangerous because they know exactly where the weak points are. Phase 1. Reconnaissance and weaponization. Even though I knew the network inside and out, I had to confirm my knowledge was current. I spent hours silently mapping everything, verifying IPs, confirming my access levels. I was a ghost moving through digital hallways, totally undetected. Their failure to monitor for unusual activity, like an ex-employee logging in at 3 a.m., was my playground. My plan had 3 goals. 1. Data annihilation *, the complete destruction of all production and customer data. 2. Infrastructure sabotage *, rendering their servers unusable. 3. Intellectual property erasure *, deleting all their source code and development history. I wrote a series of custom scripts to do the job. Not clumsy delete commands, but elegant, multi-stage payloads designed for maximum, delayed impact. * the Cerberus script * named for the 3-headed Hound of Hell. This script had 3 jobs. The first head targeted the off-site backups. It wouldn't just delete them. That's too obvious. Instead, it would corrupt them silently, bit by bit, over hours, making them useless without triggering immediate alarms. The second head would target the production databases with a drop database command, a digital nuke. The third head was cleanup, wiping the logs on the servers it ran on to cover its tracks. Asterisk the Lazarus script asterisk. This was for pure chaos. After the data wipe, it would go through the user tables and change all executive and admin passwords to random 64-character strings. It would lock everyone out, preventing any immediate response. It's a classic move to cripple operations and sow confusion. Asterisk the Scorched Earth script asterisk the grand finale. A simple but terrifying shell script to be deployed across their entire server farm. It was a modified rf/command, the infamous Linux command to delete everything. I added the no preserve root flag to bypass safety checks. This would wipe the operating system off every server it touched, turning their multi-million-dollar infrastructure into a pile of useless bricks. Phase 2, the Deadman switch. I wasn't going to be at my keyboard when it all went down. That's for amateurs. I needed plausible deniability. I decided to use a Deadman switch. I planted the scripts on a forgotten staging server I'd set up years ago, still running but not monitored. Using cron, the Linux job scheduler, I scheduled the scripts to execute at a precise time, Saturday at 3 a.m. It was perfect. The IT team would be asleep. Any weekend crew wouldn't be ready for a failure of this magnitude. It would give my scripts maximum time to run before the alarms went off Monday morning. The order was critical. Asterisk 3:00 a.m. asterisk Cerberus starts its slow, silent corruption of the backups. Asterisk 4:00 a.m. asterisk, the main Cerberus payload, hits the production databases and source code repos. Asterisk 4:15 a.m. asterisk Lazarus runs, locking out all admins and execs. Asterisk 5:00 a.m. asterisk Scorched Earth activates, propagating across the network and wiping server operating systems. By sunrise, the company would be, for all practical purposes, gone. Their failure to implement even basic detective controls would be their downfall. Phase 3, the calling card. Before I logged out for the last time, I did one final thing. I wanted them to know why. I navigated to their internal company news portal. I used my root access to edit the main index.html page directly. I deleted everything. The logos, the announcements, the smiling executive photos. In its place, in the center of the blank page, I wrote a single line in a simple, monospaced font, effective immediately. The exact phrase from my termination email. My signature. My confession and my accusation, all in 2 words. They would know who did this. And more importantly, they would know why. I took a screenshot, logged out, and closed my laptop. The plan was in motion. The architect had designed her final masterpiece. Now I just had to wait. Hashtag section 4. The hack. Countdown to 0. The next 2 days were the longest of my life. I had armed a nuke and set a timer. There was nothing to do but wait. Every moment was a weird mix of adrenaline, terror, and a cold sense of purpose. I tried to act normal. Went to the store. Watched a movie. But my mind was just counting down the seconds to 3 a.m. Saturday. Friday night, I couldn't sleep. I just sat in the dark, my laptop closed. This was it. No turning back. Involuntary job loss is one of life's most stressful events, up there with divorce or a major illness. But what I was about to do was on a different scale. A strange calm settled over me. This wasn't just about my hurt feelings anymore. This was about consequences, about a system that chews people up and spits them out, and the violent reaction that system can create. As the clock ticked past 2:59 a.m., I held my breath. 3:00 a.m. asterisk in a data center hundreds of miles away. A single line in a cron tab file activates. The Cerberus script awakens. It connects to the backup server with credentials they never revoked. It doesn't delete anything yet. It starts crawling through old archives, opening a file, flipping a few random bits, and writing the corrupted data back. An invisible cancer spreading through their only safety net. For :00 AM * stage 2. Cerberus forks into two processes. One connects to the master database server and executes drop database main_production. In a fraction of a second, years of data, millions of customer records, transaction histories, gone. The second process connects to the Git server and runs rmrf on the source code repositories. Every feature I built, every bug I fixed, wiped clean. For :15 AM * the Lazarus script wakes up. It finds the remaining admin accounts, the CEO, the CTO, my old boss Mark. It iterates through them, changing each password to a random 64-character string. Their master keys are now useless. They're locked out of their own burning house. 5:00 AM * the final act. The Scorched Earth script executes. It spreads across the network, logging into every server it can find. On each machine, it runs its single command, rf/, no preserve root. The operating systems begin to eat themselves. Critical system files disappear. One by one, their lights on the AWS dashboard would start blinking from green to red. Their digital existence was being surgically erased. From my apartment, I saw nothing, heard nothing, but I could feel it, a seismic shift in the digital world. I'd done it. I finally fell into a restless sleep as the sun rose. The world was quiet, but I knew in a few hours the silence would be broken by a symphony of screams. ##### Section 5. The aftermath, the silent scream. I woke up Saturday afternoon, feeling hollow. The adrenaline was gone, replaced by an unsettling quiet. The world hadn't ended, but I knew a universe I'd helped build had just ceased to exist. My first glimpse of the chaos came from a private Discord server for local engineers. Around 9 AM, a junior DevOps guy from my old company posted, "Anyone else seeing a massive AWS outage? None of our prod servers are responding. PagerDuty is lit up like a Christmas tree." The first replies were just standard troubleshooting, but the tone quickly shifted to panic. "I can't SSH into anything. Website's down. App is down. Everything is down. Admin passwords aren't working. And no one can log in." I read the messages, a silent observer to the apocalypse I'd started. The discovery was happening just like I thought it would. A slow, dawning horror. A junior employee on call for the weekend was the first witness. They would have tried to reboot a server and found it had no OS. They'd have tried to access the database and found it didn't exist. Then the call to the head of engineering. He'd try his own credentials and find himself locked out. Panic. He'd call the CTO. The CTO, also locked out, would call the CEO. A frantic, all-hands emergency call. Their first, desperate hope would be the backups. "Just restore from the backup," the CEO would command. And that's when they would have made the final, soul-crushing discovery. The IT team would go to the backup server, their last hope. They'd try to restore Friday's backup and get a corrupted file error. Then Thursday's, same error. They would realize the corruption was everywhere. The methodical work of the Cerberus script had been perfect. Their safety net was an illusion. By Monday morning, the company was in freefall. They had no data, no code, no servers. All they had was that intranet page with 2 words on it, effective immediately. The consequences would have been immediate and catastrophic. Asterisk operations halted asterisk with no data or app. Their business just stopped. No payments, no users, no platform. Asterisk data breach nightmare asterisk. They had a legal obligation to report the total loss of customer data, which would trigger massive fines and destroy public trust. The cost of a data breach is huge, but the cost of losing all data is company ending. Asterisk financial ruin, asterisk recovery wasn't about restoring a few files. It meant rebuilding an entire company from scratch. That would cost millions and take years. Their investors would surely pull out. I didn't have to imagine it. I saw bits and pieces online. A LinkedIn post from a sales exec, open to work because of unforeseen and catastrophic circumstances. A blind item on a tech gossip forum about a mid-sized firm that had suffered a complete data extinction event. They never went public with the real story. To the world, the company just stopped. Their website showed a server error for weeks before disappearing. They told their investors they'd suffered a sophisticated, state-sponsored cyber attack that was unrecoverable. A lie to save face, admitting their own incompetence and a single, vengeful ex-employee wiped them off the map was too humiliating. Sitting in my apartment, watching the empire I built crumble to dust, I didn't feel triumph. I felt a profound emptiness. I had won. I had my perfect, symmetrical revenge. And I was completely, utterly alone with what I'd done. So, about the title of this story. I hacked my old company and I don't regret it. And I mean it. I don't. But let me qualify that. Do I regret the person I had to become to do this? Yes. Do I regret the paranoia that follows me, the constant looking over my shoulder? Absolutely. Do I regret that a whole company, including the jobs of people who maybe didn't deserve it, was destroyed? That's more complicated. On some level, yes, I regret the collateral damage. But do I regret holding a mirror up to a company that celebrated a culture of disposability? Do I regret showing the ultimate consequence of treating people, their knowledge, their loyalty as line items to be deleted? Not for a second. My actions weren't born from a single flash of anger. They were the product of 1,000 tiny cuts, of being told we're a family, while watching that family turn into a cold, political machine, of pouring my soul into building something, only to be tossed aside by men who didn't understand it, but were happy to take credit for it, of being reduced from an architect to an obstacle, and then to a 2-sentence email. The deep psychological impact of being fired so impersonally is something our industry ignores. It's a kind of violence that leads to anxiety, depression, and a total loss of self-worth. I was pushed to the edge. And when I got there, I found the company had, through its own negligence, left a weapon in my hand. My act was extreme, but it was a reaction to an extreme provocation. It was a cry of rage against a system that sees people as expendable. They wanted to erase me. I could have let them. I could have updated my resume and moved on. But something in me knew that would be validating their actions. It would be agreeing that I was worthless, that my 5 years meant nothing. My response was a declaration of my own existence. It was me screaming into the void, I was here. I built this, and you don't get to erase me. I know what a lot of you are thinking. This was a crime. It was destructive, disproportionate, and unforgivable. And you're not wrong. My life since that day hasn't been easy. I live in a state of quiet paranoia. I use aliases. I've moved twice. The shadow of what I did is long. I can never work in the official tech industry again. I am in many ways a ghost, but I'm a ghost on my own terms. This story is a confession, but it's also a warning. A warning to companies that your people are your greatest asset, and how you treat them is your most important security policy. A culture of respect is a firewall. An empathetic offboarding process is a stronger defense than any software. I don't regret what I did because it was the only power I had left. They took my career and my professional identity. In return, I took theirs. It was a symmetrical, perfect, and terrible act of justice. And if I were faced with the same choice today, with that same cold email staring back at me, I can't honestly say I'd do anything differently. This story is a brutal example of what happens when trust breaks down. It reveals the terrifying crossover of human emotion and technical vulnerability. If you're fascinated by the intersection of technology, psychology, and security, and want to understand the real vulnerabilities on both a human and a technical level, make sure you subscribe. We break down cases like this every week to show you what's really happening behind the firewalls. So what's the lesson here? Beyond the drama, this story is a case study in failure on both sides. For companies, the lessons should be terrifying asterisk. 1. Offboarding is a critical security function. This is lesson number 1. Letting an employee go isn't just HR paperwork. It is a security emergency. The second someone is terminated, a clear, documented process must kick in to revoke all access. Email, VPN, cloud dashboards, code repos, everything. A checklist isn't optional. 2. Least privilege isn't a suggestion. Employees should only have access to what they absolutely need to do their jobs. Root level, God mode, access should be severely restricted, audited, and never tied to one person's account. I could only do this because I had keys I never should have kept. 3. Culture is your best security. How you treat people matters. A toxic environment and disrespectful firings create disgruntled employees. And a disgruntled insider is one of the biggest threats an organization can face. Empathy isn't a soft skill, it's risk management. Treating people with dignity, even when you're firing them, can be the difference between a sad ex-employee and a vengeful saboteur. For employees, my advice is the opposite of my actions asterisk. 1. Don't. Do. This asterisk asterisk, let me be crystal clear. This story is a cautionary tale, not a how-to guide. The path I chose is self-destruction. Revenge hacking will land you in federal prison for a very, very long time. The consequences will ruin your life. 2. The paranoia is its own prison. Even if you don't get caught, the act follows you. The fear, the isolation, it's a heavy price for a fleeting moment of satisfaction. Your anger is valid, but channeling it into a crime will only destroy you in the end. 3. Build, don't burn. Take that anger and turn it into fuel. Build your own company. Become a security researcher and expose flaws legally. Prove them wrong with your success, not with their destruction. It's a harder road, but it's the only one that actually leads somewhere. So I'll leave you with the question I ask myself every day. Was this justice or was it just destruction? Let me know what you think in the comments.